70%. Addressing supporters at the event, Netanyahu said Israel was squeezing Hamas and would continue operations step by step.
We are currently squeezing Hamas. We now control 60% of the territory of the Strip. You know this. We were at 50, we moved to 60. My directive is to move to, let's go step by step. First of all, 70. Let's start with that. We're pressing them from all sides, we'll deal with the remnants.
The US broker deal led by Donald Trump, Israeli forces have agreed to withdraw to a demarcation boundary known as the Yellow Line. The Yellow Line gave Israel control over roughly 53% of Gaza, mainly along border and buffer zones. The remaining areas were expected to stay under the Palestinian administration during the ceasefire process. Meanwhile, in Lebanon, Israel has steadily expanded its military control buffer zone inside southern Lebanon. Soon after the ceasefire was announced, Israel released a map marking nearly 600 square kilometers of occupied territory and listed dozens of villagers being ordered to evacuate. Nearly one-fifth of the Lebanon has now become effectively off-limits to civilians. At the center of the conflict is the Litani River, a strategic boundary around 20 to 30 kilometers north of the Israel-Lebanon border. Under UN Resolution 1701, Hezbollah was expected to stay north of the river after the 2006 war. But in March this year, Israeli officials announced plans to control southern Lebanon up to the Litani River as a long-term security zone. Israeli troops have now crossed the Litani River in several targeted operations and raids. The question now being raised is whether the action is born out of creating a security blanket for Israel or a greater Israel, which opponents talk about. On this issue, I'm joined by L.A. Director International Relations, Israel Defense and Security Forum, and Professor Swaran Singh, SIS JNU. Thank you, both of you. Let me straight away go to L.A. L.A., my question is it about greater Israel or is it about security buffer?
Well, it's 100% about security. As you mentioned, Israel when signed a ceasefire with Hamas back in September, and all the hostages were returned. Israel controlled 53% of the Gaza Strip, and as the Prime Minister mentioned, we're now controlling closer to 60% and moving even more than that. Why, you may ask? Well, because part of the 20-point plan that the ceasefire was based upon was that Hamas was going to unilaterally demilitarize. They haven't done so. After months and months and months of waiting, of trying to coax them, trying to work with them, Israel always expected that it would have to do this. It would have to demilitarize Hamas on its own. And this is exactly what it's doing. This is the best thing for the civilians in Gaza who want to have a Hamas-free life, a life that is free and also is beneficial for Israel's security. It's nothing to do with any kind of greater Israel. It has to do completely with security, both in Gaza as well as by Lebanon up north.
Okay. Professor Swaran Singh, there is always a consequence for the decisions you take. So your thought on the consequence of the decision that the government of Israel has taken to extend that security blanket across the river Litani and to keep 73% of the Gaza Strip under their jurisdiction, sir?
If you hear the Defense Minister Israel Katz, he is repeating what initially Prime Minister Netanyahu was saying, that we want to eliminate Hamas. So it's, I think, little beyond disarming Hamas in this case. Of course, after the first phase, when all the hostages of Israel were released, the second phase has not happened, and both sides can keep blaming the other. But fundamentally, I think it is also a reflection on President Trump, who along with Qatar and Turkey had brokered this ceasefire of October last year, promising that an international stabilization force would be brought in here and they will replace Israeli IDF. The first meeting of the Board of Peace happened, and they had actually announced international stabilization force with forces coming from Indonesia, Morocco, Kazakhstan, Kosovo, and Albania. But given the fact that Iran war has overtaken global consciousness, this issue of taking the ceasefire in Gaza forward has been virtually sidelined, marginalized, and I don't know how President Trump can continue to see that his 20-point program leading to the ceasefire and setting out phase one, phase two, and so on, has not actually fructified. And I think the constant attacks that we see in Gaza and Lebanon, after October, the estimates are that the 900 plus Palestinians have died after the ceasefire of October last year. And as Prime Minister Netanyahu himself has said, they have further expanded westwards from 53%, which was the ceasefire yellow line, to now 64%, and they want to go to 70%, and he left it there, not closing it at 60%. Perhaps I believe that someone from audience actually mentioned then we should go to 100%, etc. So it's in that sense ensuring complete immigration or Palestinians vacating Gaza Strip is already a very small territory. And now Palestinians, about 2.3, 2.4 million Palestinians, are limited to only about 32% of the territory by the coastal area. And I think with the plans that we see now, even the big Gaza city could come under IDF. And in that sense, ceasefire is not moving in the direction that the United States, Turkey and Qatar had together conceived of, and Board of Peace had kind of taken it forward from there. But it's definitely going in a direction where United Nations, I think, report said that in last 10 days, 10 children have died every day in Lebanon. So if you see death and destruction in that sense, so it is not moving in the direction which the ceasefire had hoped it would move in that direction. And this is unusual, constant aggressive nature of Israeli expansion westwards in Gaza, which is, I think, an issue which should be looked at. I understand the German Foreign Office has already commented their sort of sense of this being not acceptable, saying that Gaza cannot be divided in this fashion permanently, and ultimately it has to go back to two-state solutions.
Okay.
But this right now doesn't seem to be going in that direction.
When I look at these pictures, I don't think there's anything left in Gaza. I mean, so the consequence of the war is tremendous. I mean, so the pictures just tell you there is no civic infrastructure left in Gaza.
Not true. There actually is, and some of the areas are starting to actually be doing some rebuilding. The areas under Israeli control, we see there is actually over 600 trucks are going in every single day bringing humanitarian aid, and there are actually restaurants that have opened up in Gaza. There is life going on there. That's not something that people want to show, because as Hamas refuses to leave, Israel has no choice but to continue to fight, both to protect Israel and to protect any potential hope of there being some freedom.
Okay. Can I add a question to a lot of people? A lot of people ask this question. You can say that, Karthik, a lot of people say that the Israeli prescription of a peace is from the perspective of strength and security. It does not incorporate political reconciliation. Your comment, sir.
My comment is, for 20 years, Israel tried to allow for a political solution to mature, to develop out of Gaza. Both when Israel was in Gaza pre-2006, when Israeli citizens were living side by side, and then when Israel left in 2006, there was no political solution. There was no desire to try to create any sense of peace living side by side with Israel. Gaza essentially was a Palestinian state, a failed state that all it tried to do was try to build an infrastructure in order to attack and destroy Israel. So yes, since 2023, Israel is no longer giving the Gazans the benefit of the doubt. We know what their intentions are, and we're working with the elements in Gaza that want to go against Hamas. They want to challenge Hamas. There are local clans, there are groups that are trying to do so, working alongside Israel. These are not necessarily friends of Israel, certainly not Zionists. In many cases, it might be even more extreme. But the overall goal initially in stage one is to remove Hamas and make sure Hamas is not a threat to the Gazan people and to the Israeli people.
Okay, same question to you, Professor Swaran Singh.
I think I am not a believer that the force can create any solutions. Israel has tried to eliminate Hezbollah for almost half a century now, and Hamas is going in a similar direction. Whether crude force, and we know all the wars that have happened in that region, Israel has fought wars with almost every neighbor around it. Whether pure force can lead to any solution, I am not at all convinced of it. And because Board of Peace was set up and some countries had promised to volunteer their forces, and on the premise that IDF will actually withdraw and international stabilization force will take their place, and some kind of two nations solution will be worked for. What I'm saying is we are right now moving exactly in opposite direction, where Israeli settlements are likely to come up in Gaza. And of course, they will have their restaurants, and there are, of course, reports which are contradicting my colleagues' claim that 600 trucks of humanitarian assistance are reaching to Palestinians in that little strip of 30-35% land which they now have in Gaza. Reports are saying they are not reaching on everyday basis. There are difficulties of food, cleanliness, water, and everything else there. But of course, this is my version against his version. But what I'm saying is, once you have Israeli settlements organized in Gaza, that of course will have its own facilities, and restaurants are part of that kind of new ambience which could be created. But
how do you break that circle of violence? Let me quote that
acceptable?
famous line, Professor Soren Singh, from the very famous Algerian author Frantz Fanon. The circle of violence. You know, that's the word. That was something which was we were told to read in our masters in terms of understanding violence in context of coloniality. But this is not coloniality. But how do you break the circle of violence is the question.
Is that question to me?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I think ultimately we have to ensure that initiatives that President Trump had started for this region in setting up this Board of Peace, which even had its inaugural meeting, should be activated, and that is the forum which should find as to what has to be done on the ground, and what happens to international stabilization force, why it is that the 5 nations that have promised to contribute forces have not contributed. In that sense, I also look at this as Prime Minister Netanyahu's defiance, I'm intentionally using the word, of President Trump and his policies. And in fact, you would remember some of the comments of President Trump promising Palestinians
You're giving a lot of space
that they
to
could
Trump.
leave Gaza and return to Gaza whenever they want. And whether we trust those promises is another matter altogether. But the initiative fundamentally was one of United States and President Trump's individually. And is it defiance, or is it in some kind of a connivance that the two leaders are letting things go the way they are going? They are definitely going in opposite direction compared to potentially looking at two-state solutions. And I think we have seen decades after decades, it's not the first time Israel is fighting with neighbors. It has not resolved any of the problems of Israel. And I gave example of Hezbollah for about 40 plus years now there. And Hamas is of course not that old. But whether force is going to create any solution, at least I have my doubts about it. And therefore, I think Board of Peace and President Trump has to step in. And why he's not commenting or stepping into it, despite the fact that even the ceasefire for Lebanon was being negotiated in the United States. And he's, of course, the author. He claims to be the author of ceasefire of October last year for Gaza. And this is being destroyed in that sense. And surprise, surprise, he's not saying anything, which makes people speculate whether it is in connivance with the United States that President Trump is allowing Prime Minister Netanyahu to publicly claim things as audacious as saying that they will potentially take over entire Gaza, and then the defense minister saying that ultimately the Palestinians will be made to go, and he used the word at right time and in right manner, etc., etc. We have no idea what right manner could be to ask people to leave their territory and then become kind of asylum seekers around the world.
Absolutely, absolutely. And a closing comments from Elepesh. Can we say that this current position of Israel will not turn into the permanent position? Your assessment, sir?
Well, I mean, I think I don't think it will turn into a permanent solution.
Permanent position, not solution. Permanent position.
Position, yes. Position. But I will say, in response to Professor Singh's comments, Israel didn't attack its neighbors. Israel was attacked by its neighbors. That's consistently happened. Israel is responding. When it comes to what's happening in Gaza, the reason why the International Stabilization Force isn't active, it's not because they're distracted by Iran. It's because they're afraid to fight Hamas. Israel always understood that it's only up to them to fight Hamas. When it comes to Lebanon, it's Hezbollah. Hezbollah needs to be disarmed. Israel's trying to allow the Lebanese army to take the initiative to be strong enough to confront Hezbollah, but as of now, they're not able to. So there is a military angle alongside a diplomatic angle. That's been the entire approach, and it continues to be the entire approach.
But Eli, okay, you have used the word Hezbollah. Let me ask you, when will and who will and how will Israel come to the conclusion that you are done with Hamas and Hezbollah? You see, what is that threshold, I want to know as a journalist, when you say, okay, we are done with Hezbollah? Are we talking about no Hezbollah? How do you determine that there will be no Hezbollah? How will you determine, sir, that there will be no Hamas? Because we are not talking about industrial units. We are talking about Hamas and Hezbollah as an ideology. So tomorrow you might be doing away with the militant cadre, but the same thought can take place or take birth in different minds, in fresh people, maybe civilians, which a lot of people have been calling this hybrid warfare. So how do you decide, when do you decide, who decides that, sir?
You're absolutely right. These are major concerns, but I would say the way that we will interpret it is when Hamas or Hezbollah or whatever develops afterwards is no longer threatening Israel. And that's what we need to realize, is that once there is an entity in Gaza that is strong enough to constrain Hamas and say, we don't want to fight with Israel, we want to live alongside with Israel, then Israel will be satisfied. That's what Israel hoped when it left Gaza in 2006 and moved all of its civilians out. Same thing with Hezbollah. We were fighting Hezbollah 20 years ago. We left, hoping that
the repeated military solutions which Israel tried on Lebanon has not resolved the issue. It's like you are mowing the garden. So what happened in 80s, what happened in 70s, I'm not saying what Israel did was wrong. I'm just saying look at the pattern. There's a new crop which comes up every 7th year or 8th year.
But I would say there are differences. Differences is the link, the funding link from Iran to Hezbollah. The funding link and the transporting military weapons from Syria, from Assad's regime into Hezbollah, that's been removed. Israel certainly has created significant harm to the leadership of Hezbollah. There's a lot of changes going on. Frankly, how Iran has reacted to the Gulf countries. A lot of the Gulf countries are now working with Israel and see Hezbollah and Hamas, the destabilization they are both providing to the entire Middle East, as problematic. I think there's a lot of opportunities and there's a lot of reasons to be optimistic.
Professor Swansingh, a minute to you, then I close this discussion. Do you think that there is any solution in sight, or it's a conflict which will have a long inning? History has seen like 30 years war. Maybe they are not comparable, but I'm just giving you an example, like a 30-year war. Do you think that are we looking at a long conflict?
To me, it looks really ongoing conflict, because maybe after some time we will see some kind of interlude, but this is not how it is going to end, because when we see in two parties at conflict, one sitting in judgment to say when the war is going to end and when, according to me, Hamas will be finally gone, that is not going to end. Only 2 days back, IDF has killed, for example, Mohammed Odeh, the head of army being the Al-Qassam brigades. And a month before, they killed his predecessor. In fact, in last few months, they've killed 4 heads of Al-Qassam brigades. And they keep getting replaced by one after another, and Israel will keep killing them, hopefully. That is how the track record shows us. Now, whether that kind of situation is going to end that conflict, I am not so hopeful of it. I assume that we were kind of fortunate that 3 countries together, as I said, Turkey, Qatar and United States, particularly President Trump, had stepped in with his 20-point program, had set up a board of peace. perhaps creating a little bit of hope, even when we know that President Trump's relations with Israel are very different compared to his any relation, if he has any, with the Palestinians.
Okay.
Assumption was that the third party could maybe create some kind of ambience where talks could lead to some kind of solution, but apparently we, as I said, we are going in wrong direction right now.
Okay, thank you all of you. This is all I had on point 2. In on point 3, we're going to talk about the fires that are taking place in Himalayas. I'll, without wasting any more time, I'll straight away go to Chandra Bhushan, President and CEO of the I Forest, because what's happening in Himalayas is completely unacceptable. It's unacceptable. Every year it happens. Mr. Bhushan, why is this happening every year? Why is there no process in place to stop it? And what's prompting it? Just climate change or mismanagement of the forests?
Kartikeya, first of all, the last time